everybody. Welcome to another episode of Amazing Guitars Friday. And it's really amazing this Friday because we've got a special guest, Andy Paredes, and thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
And,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, Andy's an awesome guy. I mean, great, fantastic guitar player. And I'm so happy to have him be a part of this. And Andy's going to show us a little bit about the latest Line 6 Variax guitar.
Yeah, so this is the Variax Standard. So this is a collaboration between Line 6 and Yamaha guitars. So we've been creating the Variax, we've been doing Variax since the early 2000s.
Nice.
So it's been going on for a while. And the whole idea behind Variax guitars was the idea of, just like how we model amps and cabinets and effects, the idea was, well, let's model classic guitars. And not only classic guitars like ES 335s and Strats and Tellys, but also, to me, it was really important that we were getting into like the workhorse instruments where we could, instead of maybe taking 24 different guitars to a show, you can take one.
Nice.
So it was kind of, to me as someone who's either been performing or worked with people as a tech, performing, this is one of those constant pain points, I would say, for traveling musicians is you have to bring, the acoustic guitar, and then you bring the 12-string, and then you bring in the sitar for one or two songs, if you're doing an old Rolling Stones or Beatles tune, you gotta have the sitar sound. So the idea, to me, with Variax that makes it great for like the working musician is the fact that it looks and feels and plays and responds just like a traditional electric guitar. So this obviously is very Fender inspired, we'll say.
Yeah.
So it's got the three single coil pickups. So it worked just like that. If you wanted the kind of the funky out of phase type of sound, you've got all that stuff that you would expect from an electric guitar, right? But what's really cool about it, because we've got this little battery, in the back here. So this gives us up to 12 hours charge. So each one of these is 3 hours. So I've got 9 hours currently. So what that power is going to do, and I've got some extra stuff here, what I can do now is instead of just having a traditional guitar with a 5-way switch and volume and tone the way I would expect, what happens now, when I hit this button, what happens is it switches, instead of reading from the magnetic pickups, it's going to actually read from the piezos.
And that's the cool thing too, just to interject for a second, that you can play this guitar with magnetic pickups.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a fantastic standalone guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I love my JTV, it's a similar thing. Perfect.
Right. So it's the same idea, but with the Standard, it's just a little bit lower price point. Compared to JTV, but It's all Variaxes are the same, whether you're looking at the custom JTVs that are USA built all the way down to the Standards. It's the exact, once you hit the button, all bets are off. It's the exact same stuff.
Yeah.
So when I hit this model button here, what happens is instead of it reading from the magnetic pickups, then it's going to read from the piezo pickups. And what that's going to do is that feeds the little computer. And you'll notice I'm not using any weird special cable. It's just a normal 1/4-inch jack. So you could go into any traditional amp or go direct into whatever you normally go through your normal connections. It's going to be fine. But what's cool is now, electric guitar. If I just hit this button, now I have a family of resonators. So if I want my tricone resonator, for example, I've got that without having to put this guitar down, turn it off, grab another guitar, check the tuning. I can just hit a button, and now I've got that. But not only do I have the resonator, but I can use this 5-way switch to go through the 5 different positions. So some of my personal favorites are, like this one. So if you need to do, like one song where you need that type of sound, like I was alluding to before about the sitar, to me this is a really cool thing, because all I have to do is hit this, I just go to my second position, and now, you can get all those, classic sounds like, like with the choral sitar, but you don't have to drag a choral sitar.
All right, that's incredible.
And one of my other favorites too, because, like how they say, if you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. Sometimes you just need a banjo. Like maybe you're doing like an old Eagles tune, or maybe you're doing some of the newer band stuff where you start to hear these kind of traditional American instruments in American music. But you actually have a banjo here too.
And there's no special effects on that or anything.
No.
That's just straight. That is
It's
so
just the
amazing.
guitar.
Andy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And for me, I think one of the biggest pain points for traveling musicians is when you have to deal with acoustic instruments. whether you're putting them into a vehicle and it's traveling, or even worse, if you're flying. Like we've all seen the horror stories about people's acoustics getting crushed in the airline transit. But even taking a hollow body guitar 35,000 feet in the air, a lot of times there's no heat in the cargo area, and it's like negative 70 degrees, Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
When you're up that high. So that's why you always hear people say you should really loosen your strings,
Right.
because what's happening is your body is going to flex really hard. And it does it on electric guitars too, but because it's a solid piece of wood, they're a little more robust. But I've unfortunately seen a few acoustic guitars just get destroyed
Yeah.
in transit. And again, it's just one more thing you have to tune, and you have to keep an eye out for, so things aren't getting knocked over. Most of the time when you do these festivals, it's not just you playing; it's you and 10 of your favorite friend bands playing,
Right.
and there's crew everywhere. So I mean, stuff happens, stuff gets knocked over. But to me, this is like a great solution for Variax, because you get an acoustic guitar, just like how you saw me with the Resonators. I can do that with acoustics too. So I'm just going to move one position over to acoustic guitar, and now I have like kind of my traditional dreadnought. And one of the things that I love about this, and this is kind of going into geek mode a little bit, but you know how when you're in the studio with the miking technique is really important on acoustic guitars. So traditionally, the closer a microphone is to the body, the more kind of resonance you get, and then because of things that they call, when you get really close on the mic, you get extra low end, right? And then as you pull the mic further away, you'll get kind of more of the room sound.
Mm-hmm.
So the tone knob works
No.
to adjust the microphone.
No
Yeah.
way.
So it's pretty cool.
I wasn't realize that.
Yeah, so
Unbelievable.
it's something that you can just hear, like I don't know, because we're not going direct here, but
Yeah. But you can tweak your mic placement right on the page, right when you're playing. Wow.
yeah. So
So
for example, like this, if I'm rolling it all the way off, I can tell I'm really close to the body.
Wow.
So for me, kind of my default is because I kind of almost always, for my acoustic Variax, I almost always go to roughly the middle, because that's like the halfway point. Whereas like for my electric guitars at home, I literally just like clip the tone knob. I don't like tone knobs on electric guitars traditionally, unless you're playing jazz.
Right.
But for this, to me, that's the only time you'll ever see me fiddle with a tone knob, is if I'm playing on a Variax acoustic instrument and I'm just kind of like moving the mic position.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about that is it's not really a tone would not be a good idea, but when you're moving the mic, now like you can EQ yourself. Like if you're in the band, I need to poke out a little bit more. I need to.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a pretty
Wow.
cool. I mean, the team and I wasn't around when we did the original Variax, but you can tell they spent a lot of time on this. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of thinking went into this.
Golly.
So to me, that's one of my kind of like favorite fun things about the Dreadnought and all of the acoustic, whether it's the Rezos or the acoustic instruments. The tone knob is not a high end roll off. Like
Right.
Traditional.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
But some of the other things that I really like, to me, one of the, an even bigger hassle than taking a 6-string acoustic on the road with you is taking a 12-string acoustic on the road with you.
Oh, man.
So to me, this is so great, because without switching guitars, I got that kind of Dreadnought 12-inch.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that we do that's kind of fun is the second and fourth positions are always like the alternates. So for example, if I want to get maybe a bigger body 12-string, I can go up the fourth position.
Amazing. And does
There's a
that,
little brighter.
does that also have the mic placement on that too? Oh, man. Wow, there's
really-
a million sounds, right there.
Yeah, you can really fatten it up. And then if you want like the big jumbo body, that's all the way up. And you can hear that pretty quick.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like a big, kind of like heavy strumming stuff, definitely go with that bigger body and get that moving.
That's incredible. So that's just a standalone guitar. There's no pedal board, nothing.
Nope.
Anybody can just go direct and get those sounds.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
So to me, that's fun, and there's I'm not going to go through every single thing. You know,
Right.
that would probably take a while. But
Do you have an estimate of how many guitars are in there?
yeah, we have about two dozen guitars.
Wow.
So the way we separate it out is we have 10 banks, and then there's 5 different instruments or 5 different settings in each bank. So you have roughly 50 total different positions, and then you have the custom 1 and custom 2 where you can put your own personal settings. But to me, the acoustic and the resonators, that's to me what's kind of like the big draw for like the working musician, is because you need, most people don't have the time or the luxury of taking 8 to 10 different guitars on the road with them because of acoustic needs. In the old days, I would often see people, they've got their traditional Les Paul, their Strat, their Tele, maybe an SG or 335, and then they had to take all their acoustic instruments with them too. This could cut down on that significantly,
Yeah.
especially if you're only doing like
Yeah.
1 or 2 songs.
And if you don't have the ability to purchase all those guitars.
Exactly, and I nowadays too, like House of Worship is a huge market
Yeah.
for guitar players. But when you're on a stage and you've got a lot of other musicians and there's other things happening on stage, not just the band, space is a premium.
It is,
So
yeah.
the old days of having like 2 racks of 2 ultra stands with 12 instruments, that's not going to happen in a lot of House of
No.
Worship situations.
And the thing I like about the guitar, I tour a lot with shows, theater
Mm-hmm.
productions. So we are going to have a banjo or a different sound
Absolutely.
for a musical. So I'll just fly with one, just a Variax, and
There you
then
go.
whatever they ask for. And if they ask for it on the spot, the music director may say, "Oh, it'd be nice to have an acoustic guitar right here." I'm like, "I got it, not a problem. It's
Bing.
amazing."
Yeah.
So you can really, be a valuable asset to any music director as well if you're versatile. If you can, give them things they never had an idea that they could ever get.
Yeah, and in the old days, it's a new era. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of, you can use technology to your advantage, or you can I see some people use technology as a crutch, or you can use it as an
Yeah.
advantage. And to me, this is definitely
Oh, it's
taking
an
advantage.
advantage. And I may not play all those guitars live, but I'm really big into composing. So to have a Variax, when I'm looking for something to stick in a soundtrack, is
Oh, it's
amazing,
perfect.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what? It may just be 2 measures of a baritone guitar, and you can retune this guitar.
Yeah, you definitely
So
can.
That's amazing too, because a lot of people are into alternate tunings, and that could
Mm-hmm.
be 5 guitars.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that you see
Yeah.
when people are touring now. Like I might see someone who's taking, maybe like for example, if you're doing like kind of like grunge style music, maybe Soundgarden, like a band like that, their guitar player uses all sorts of different alternate tunings. There's a classic saying on the road, like 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
Right.
So you got to have a backup for everything, and then there's like the emergency to the backup. So someone, even if you have like 4 different tunings, you might have 8 to 12 guitars out just because you need backups and emergencies for those units. So to me, this is another really cool thing because you can do all sorts of crazy tuning. So I'll kind of give you a little rundown of what you can do. So first off, I'm just turning the knob here. So I'm just going to be in standard tuning right now. So it's just standard.
Nice.
So now if I were to maybe want to do the drop D, traditionally you got to like hit the tap button, do the D, and then when you change that by a whole step, everything's going to shift a little.
Right.
So you might be standing there for 30 seconds, retuning. But to me, what's so cool with this, I can just do this, and all of a sudden it's down. And so I didn't have to change anything. It just,
Right.
it's just,
No retuning, right.
it's just dropping there. Other things that I find interesting, like for example, I think of like a lot of my friends play in like tour and cover bands, and one pain point for them is like, oh yeah, we're playing this Eagles tune, and I have to have one guitar tune just for open E, or they're doing some Allman Brothers, and I have to have that one guitar tune to open E,
Right.
and they're only going to do that 2 or 3 times a night. But wouldn't it be great to have open tuning selectable? So not just drop tunings, you actually have open tunings. And we have 10 different options here. So for example, if maybe I want to just go from like a drop tuning to, like I want to tune everything down at half
Yeah.
step.
There's
Or-
a lot of music like that. Yeah, for singers, vocalists, they might say, well, I sing that in a different key, but if you can spin it,
Yes.
instead of having a capo, yeah,
Yes.
it's incredible.
Dad Gad,
Yeah.
so you can get your
Yeah.
cashmere on.
And just for the viewers too, you can go into, like on your computer, you can, if you have the editor, does this have, it wouldn't have an editor, or does it?
It does.
So
yeah.
you can go really quick, like sometimes I'm on the road, I need an alternate tuning, I'll have my computer right with me on the bandstand, and I can type in the notes
Oh,
that I
yeah.
want on the editor. You know, so you can make your own tuning.
And you don't even have to do that. Like, so if you're going to use the editor, then you would need to be connected digitally.
Okay.
You know, and so Line 6 makes a number of different products that have Variax connections on them. We call it VDI, for Variax Digital Interface. And that's what this secondary jack here is for. So it's kind of probably going to be hard to see on the
Yeah.
camera. But that's what this jack is for. It's basically an EtherCon cable, which is like the high-end Cat 5 with the big, jacket on
Right.
it. But you can actually retune on the fly. You don't even need to have a connection to a computer if you want. How that works, I'm just going to go back to standard here. We'll So, for example, let's say I wanted to do like an open E tuning, because that's not actually on the dial here. So we've got open D, we've got open G, we've got open A, we've got baritone, so, like if I want a baritone, I've got that, or if I want open G.
Wow, that's pretty, yeah, for slide, it's
So,
good for slide.
it's great for slide. Well, let's say there's a situation where you're like, I need, like, music director says, hey, but can you just go to open E and do a little thing? It's like, okay, let me grab my computer.
Yeah.
You can actually do that right off the face of the unit. So just so you can see this, if I hold this down for a couple seconds, you're going to notice how it starts blinking back
Okay, I
and
see
forth.
that.
I'm just going to go to somewhere it's okay for me to overwrite, and then all I'm going to do is play the notes that I want.
Wow, is
Yeah.
that fast? Jeez, it's saved, as long as you know where you saved it.
As long
Yeah.
as you like it, then just hold that down for 2 seconds again, and it'll give you. If you hold this down for 2 seconds, it gives you that little rapid flash. So now that's stored.
That's
So I can go back
amazing. And if you over tweak it like I tend to, you can always do a factory reset. You can save this stuff in a
Oh,
folder.
yeah. It's
it's
really
not a
easy.
problem, yeah.
So I mean, we're scratching the surface, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff you can do with this, and that's not to say I tend to focus on the things that to me make the most sense for a touring musician, because that's the majority of the people I work with
Right.
are people who are doing theatrical productions, or they're doing house of worship, or they're just slugging it out 3-4 nights a week in band. So to me, that's where my solutions, my mindset tends to
Right.
go on. But I've also worked for a number of studio guitar players, who are really strong players, and they use Variax or 30 guitars. It's like kind of one or the other. I
Right.
can bring 30 guitars to a session, or I can bring
Right.
maybe 2 or 3 of my main guitars, and then the Variax will pick up all the other stuff. But it really it depends on what makes sense to you and what your ease of use is. But for me, I tend to think of it as like it's an electric guitar, and then just the acoustic guitar and the resonator, like that's the price of admission right there.
Right.
But there's tons of other stuff in here too. So for example, I tend to think about the acoustics and the resonators the most. But let's say maybe 1 or 2 songs out of the night you need a jazz box. Well, we've got a whole setting for jazz box.
Oh, nice.
So for
Oh,
notice
wow,
it
that's
gets
really,
a little bit quieter.
Wow, that's really a nice tone.
But then you've also got your semi-hollow. So it's basically, think of like Gibson 335s
Right.
and Epiphone Casinos. And I've still got the 5 positions of that. I've also got the chimes. These are the old Rickenbackers.
Uh-huh.
And to me, that was one of those guitars that was always super cool, like the Rickenbacker 12 string. But I'm not going to go out and buy a Rickenbacker 12 string just because I
Right.
think it sounds cool. Well, so just like with the acoustic guitars,
Wow.
so if you're thinking like the Byrds or Tom
Uh-huh.
Petty, that sort of sound, you got that.
Jeez.
The rockabilly, that's the big old Gretches. Thinking of things like the Special, that's basically anything that's a Gibson that isn't a Les Paul. So like Firebird,
Right.
things like that, Melody Makers.
Okay.
When you jump over to Lester, that's Les Paul.
Yeah, I
Notice
love
it
the Les
definitely
Paul
gets
sound.
loud.
Yeah, that's one of my go-tos.
The Spank, that's all Stratty. And it's interesting. Sometimes I think the Variax actually sounds more like a traditional Strat.
The Strat.
the Strat.
Yeah, it's got a
setting.
great sound to it.
Yeah. And then finally, the T model, that's all the Telly stuff. One thing that I thought was really cool about the Telly, like the first, third, and fifth is what you would expect a Telly to be, but second and fourth are humbuckers.
Man, that
So you hear
sounds
it kind
great
of
for
dig in a little
yeah,
bit, you
chicken
know.
picking, man.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
So,
Gosh.
so that's the really simple rundown of Variax. So it really is just, it's a traditional guitar, you know, like everything you would expect it to be. And sometimes people are weirded out, like if they look at the back, they're like, well, where's the robotic tuning gears?
Oh, right.
It's doing everything through the
Inside,
software.
right.
And that's the really important thing to note, because you know, I've had people say, well, what if I break a tuning gear? Is it going to take me 6 months to get a replacement? I'm like, no, you can
It's
go to
regular.
your local
Yeah.
store and find anything that fits and just go as long as it fits. You know, so we make this version. This is the Variax Standard. We make 3 traditional colors. You know, the kind of the standards, white, black, and sunburst. But then we've also done some really cool limited editions. Like we did a limited edition black or onyx. There was like this cool purple sound, and then there was also
Oh yeah, I
like
saw the
a
purple
green.
ones. Yeah, those are killer.
Yeah, so we make a few different versions of the standard, and then we also have what's called the Shuriken, and that's a signature model with this artist named Steve McKay from the group 12 Foot Ninja, and that's definitely Steve's design. It kind of he kind of jokes about how it looks like a guitar that Batman would play. It's all like matte black, and it's got this. It's really clever design. You know, body design is really ergonomic to sit with. But with that design, it's actually there's the 270, which is actually a 27-inch scale.
Oh wow.
Because he likes to maybe just naturally detune, and he says that it feels better to him to play, so he made it at a 27-inch scale. And it's a single humbucker in the bridge that he never ever uses, because he just constantly does everything with Variax. And if you've never seen him do what he does, it's the most in-depth use of Variax I've ever seen.
Yeah, there's a video, right?
Oh, there's a few videos out there.
Yeah.
But
There's
yeah,
good stuff to check out.
yeah. So definitely check out what Stevic's doing with the Shuriken 270. It's pretty cool. But to me, once you turn on the Variax software, like it doesn't matter what, you know, if it's ebony versus rosewood versus maple, or if it's humbucker versus single, because once it goes into the piezos, they all sound exactly the same. You know, so whether it's this model all the way up to the USA JTB Customs,
It's the same.
yeah, it's the same sound.
Yeah, and I love to play my JTB. I mean, it's the one I take out. I take it everywhere. I love the way the guitar plays.
Yeah, they feel
That's my
good.
main axe,
you know.
yeah. Nice. Well, thanks a lot, Andy.
Absolutely.
I mean, that
Thanks
was a
for-
great
Thanks for
interview,
having me.
and I hope everybody had a good Friday. And stay tuned, and if you want to do any deep diving, Andy's got videos, and he's an awesome guy. So check out Andy on Line 6. Have an excellent week, and see you next Friday.